Jeremy Hunt unveiled the spring budget today, and there were some interesting announcements regarding a further 2p cut to national insurance, an increase to the child benefit eligibility cut-off, among many other points of note. But as this is a channel about investing, the part that I want to focus on, and what I believe is the most exciting, is the confirmation of the rumoured British ISA. This will give investors an additional £5,000 allowance to invest in UK listed companies. This is on top of the £20,000 allowance that already exists, so that means individuals now have a total ISA allowance of £25,000. This is overall very good news, but maybe not as great as some others will make it out to be, and I'll give my thoughts on it at the end of the video. But for now, let's have a quick look at the details of the British ISA. Although Jeremy Hunt did mention the British ISA briefly in his address to the House of Commons, to find out all the further details about it, you do have to go digging on the government website to find this UK ISA consultation document. This document gives us a much better idea of what to expect from the British ISA. So firstly, in the introduction, they quickly go over what an ISA is, but to summarise, an ISA is basically a type of tax-advantaged account which protects your savings and investments from capital gains tax, dividends tax and other types of taxes. And each individual has a £20,000 annual ISA allowance to basically use it or lose it every tax year. We currently have 4 types of ISA. Cash ISA, Stocks and Shares ISA, Innovative Finance ISA and Lifetime ISA, and your total contributions across all those types of ISA cannot exceed £20,000. The introduction of a UK ISA will now mean that there are 5 types of ISA, but a crucial detail is that this UK ISA will have its own separate allowance of £5,000, bringing the total ISA allowance to £25k per tax year. This may sound great, and of course it is great to those who already max out their main 20k ISA allowance, as it means they'll be able to shelter further investments from tax. But I am left wondering how exciting this really is, because it is going to benefit very few people, because how many people are really using their main 20k allowance anyway? This is really only a positive for the top few percent of people who've maxed out their main 20k allowance. Anyway, the UK government are doing this because they want to encourage people to invest in the UK capital markets and basically increase the competitiveness of the London Stock Exchange at a time when a lot of companies are choosing to list elsewhere. This does make sense to me, and it's nice to see the government doing something to tackle this growing issue. I'll now go through the questions in this consultation, as they do give a pretty good idea of how it'll work, although nothing is confirmed yet, so this is subject to change. So the UK ISA would allow investors to invest in UK shares only, and the UK government is basing their definitions off of the previous Personal Equity Plans scheme. UK shares are defined as shares in companies that are incorporated in the UK and are either listed on a UK recognised stock exchange or admitted to trading on a UK recognised stock exchange. And this will mainly be the main LSE and the LSE AIM, which allows investors to support a range of UK companies from small companies on AIM to medium and large companies on the LSE. The most important part, I think, is the next point about the eligibility of collective investment vehicles. This addresses whether the UK ISA can be used to invest in funds as well. And what they've stated is that they are looking to work off the definition that investments in unit trusts and investment trusts will be authorised if at least 75% of the value of the underlying investments held by the fund were invested in eligible UK companies. Technically, as it's only 75%, you could therefore have some overseas stocks indirectly in your UK ISA, although it would be a small proportion. Exchange-traded funds, or ETFs, are not mentioned here, but it would be common sense for ETFs that invest in UK stocks to also be allowed in the UK ISA. In that case, I'd be using the majority of my UK ISA allowance, if I did use it, to invest in the Wisdom Tree UK Quality Dividend Growth ETF, as I believe that is the best option available to invest in UK equities on the market right now. And if I do by some miracle max out my 20k ISA allowance, I'll certainly be slamming 5k into the Wisdom Tree UK ETF with the ticker UGRW. Next up, they note that corporate bonds issued by UK companies and UK government bonds, also known as gilts, will also be allowed within the UK ISA. This is great, and I see no reason why such UK bonds would not be allowed in a UK ISA anyway. I imagine there'll be a certain section of society that will take up this possibility of having another 5k worth of bonds in a tax-free wrapper. There's then a quick mention that there should be restrictions on cash, which is unsurprising. After all, the UK ISA is designed to stimulate the UK equity markets, And you're not doing that by having cash sat in your account. Moving on to the design of the UK ISA, it will for the most part work in a similar way to other ISAs, but with some differences. It seems like we'll be able to subscribe to as many UK ISAs in the same tax year as we want, as long as our total contributions do not exceed the 5k allowance. However, as the government mentions here, it would make more sense to just use one provider rather than complicating your own situation and investment management. Regarding transfers in, they're considering a couple of options, but I personally think most likely here they'll not allow transfers from other types of ISA into a UK ISA, as it'll just make it unnecessarily complicated to keep track of the allowances. I could be wrong though. And in regards to transfers out, the government proposes we should not be allowed to transfer a UK ISA out into another type of ISA. This makes sense because it is a separate allowance at the end of the day. And there's another mention of cash holding rules and the desire to prevent investors from just holding cash in the account. So they're really emphasising that they want this to be invested in the UK stock market and not just sat around. The final bit I'll go over in this document is Chapter 6. As there is not much of interest in Chapter 4, and Chapter 5 is just a summary of the questions. And what Chapter 6 tells us is that the UK ISA is probably not going to be available at the start of the new tax year. They mention the consultation will run from the 6th of March 2024 until June 2024, and there is no commitment as to when the UK ISA will be released. I can't see it being released anytime soon, and I do think it will take a while for providers to design and implement UK ISAs onto their platforms. So if I were you, I wouldn't sit around waiting for it to be released, as you might be waiting a while yet. So that's a detailed summary of the new British ISA or UK ISA, whatever you want to call it. I hope that it's given you more details rather than just the headline that everyone is talking about. Before summing up my thoughts, I just want to quickly remind us all that this is in addition to the ISA changes that were announced in the autumn statement last year. The key point from the autumn statement was that we will be able to subscribe to multiple ISAs of the same type every year from April 2024. That is still the most exciting ISA change to me, as it means I'll be able to open a stocks and shares ISA with my two favourite platforms, Invest Engine and Trading 212, rather than having to choose. For a full breakdown of the previous ISA changes that were announced, be sure to check out the video I made on it at the time. What do I think of the announced British ISA? Well, as briefly mentioned at the start of the video, I do think it's a good thing, but I don't think it's as exciting as a lot of YouTubers will make it out to be. This is an additional 5k allowance on top of the 20k allowance we already have. I don't know about you, but I don't know many people who are able to max out their 20k allowance anyway, so giving people an additional 5k allowance just for investing in UK companies is only going to benefit very few people. I personally will still be prioritising my main 20k stocks and shares ISA allowance, as I want to invest globally and not just exclusively in UK stocks. And there's nothing stopping me from investing in UK stocks in my main ISA anyway if I wanted to. That being said, if you are lucky enough to be able to max out the main 20k allowance, then this additional 5k UK ISA allowance is undoubtedly a good thing, and I do like that the government is encouraging people to invest in UK listed companies. However, I do think a much better way of incentivising investing in UK listed companies would have been to remove the 0.5% stamp duty reserve tax that we have to pay when buying UK stocks. I don't know about you, but every time I buy a UK stock, it does annoy me that we have to pay 0.5% in tax. Removing this tax would have incentivised everyone to buy UK stocks, regardless of if they're able to max out their ISA allowances. I don't want to complain too much though, because an additional ISA allowance is always welcome, and it is good for those who will be able to use it. And with the capital gains and dividend tax thresholds being reduced from the start of the new tax year, it'll be even more important to ensure you use a tax-advantaged account. Starting from April, we'll only be able to receive £500 of dividends tax-free and only make £3,000 of capital gains tax-free. These thresholds are much smaller than what they've been previously, and quite easy to breach if you're a regular investor, and extremely easy to breach if you're a long-term investor. So I'd definitely make sure I keep my main portfolios in a tax-advantaged account, whether that be a stocks and shares ISA, a SIP, or the soon-to-be-released UK ISA. That is it for this one. I'd be interested to know your thoughts on the announced UK or British ISA in the comments below. It's certainly going to generate a lot of discussion. Me personally, I might not ever open one because, as I say, I struggle to reach the 20k allowance, never mind another 5k allowance. If you're interested in learning more about UK stocks and whether they represent an interesting investment opportunity, you might want to check out this video on screen now, where I look at whether we should buy UK stocks that look particularly cheap at the moment. As always, thank you for watching.